Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome to this episode of Transitioning Humanitarians podcast. And here is me with my board because I thought I would just like super clearly show you, depict you how we are not using the tool of how, and instead we're just using it against ourselves. And I want to demonstrate it to you. And then, of course, suggest to you how else can we use the tool that we have, the question that we have of how. Because I see so many of my clients struggling with this question of even if we know what we want, we then get stuck at the how level, right? A lot of the times we're like, okay, we get excited, we think it's time to transition, we want to be with our families, we want to have the job that fulfills us, we want to have the freedom, we want to have all of those things. And we somehow know what that looks like, but then all of a sudden, then we realize, wait a minute, we don't know how. And then I see so many people are doing this, which is a very wrong, counterproductive way of doing it. Maybe wrong is not the right word, ironically, but more like counterproductive way and why that's the case. And I want to demonstrate it to you before going to how else can you use the tool that we have that is how, which needs to allow us to open up possibilities of what and how we can achieve what we want, right? So the reason why I wrote down all of them in detail is because I feel like I have been speaking about it in so many different ways, and I thought that maybe the visual, very detailed way of showing you will help you even get it more and deeper. And that's the reason why I thought of showing you what that I don't know how mindset generates for us. And then what do we do to change it? So the best way that I can demonstrate how it looks like by using one of my clients' example, and her example is that she wants to not only like advance in her career in the humanitarian world, but she also wants to have a family, right? So then, as soon as she gets to the family part, she's like, I don't know how. Now, whenever she thinks that, the feeling that generates from it, and you need to check with yourself, of course, as to how do you feel when you think that, right? So I really like highly suggest for you to go through with me or after this podcast for you to then go through yourself to see what are the feelings that's coming up when you think I don't know how, and then what are the things you're doing and what are the things you're not doing. So here in her case, she feels like confused or she feels stuck. Some people describe it, I feel blocked. And then the usual thing, what we do when we feel confused or when we feel unclear, unsure, basically, right? What we usually do is we start searching for answers outside of us, somewhere else. We feel like someone else needs to know the answer. We may not be the person who knows it, but someone else, right? So we started searching for answers with colleagues, with people we know. We start listening to a podcast like this, or maybe asking questions from people who have gone through this. So we start searching for answers. We also start asking the same questions. I noticed from so many clients is the same question of I don't know how, I don't know how, and then we just keep asking in the process every time. That just keeps cementing our confusion. It keeps cementing our fear. It keeps cementing our um, uh, insecurity and clarity. And therefore, we, instead of doing something with all of what we have found, we then start just consuming and consuming, meaning that we start like maybe consuming my podcast and keep searching for your answers, right? Or consuming information from colleagues you have found and think about it, or wanting to have more information, more information. And then you try some of them, but still from this lens of, I don't know how. right? From this lens of confusion, from this lens of insecurity, or from this lens of blockage. You try something and then you just give up at the first failure, or at the first time it didn't work, or the second time it didn't work according to you. And then you just feel like, well, I knew it. I knew it, right? Or keep doubting as you keep doing things. And then because your brain does not like being doubtful all of the time, and your brain wants to have a security or certainty, and then it just wants to just let you give up and not think about it and have this relief somewhat. And then you want to maybe try to redo it again, but then you feel like it's failing again, or it's not going to work, and you may not even want to redo it. Now, things that we're not doing in that moment that's so interesting is that we're not deciding on any of the information, meaning that even though we have gathered that information, we may not really use them, or we may not use it enough in the way that helps us make a decision, right? And the reason why we don't decide is because those are just information from other people, meaning they're not our information. They're not our opinion, really, right? We may agree and disagree with them. It's just like we haven't really taken the time to think, to decide for ourselves, or to really be like, which one do I really want to, or where do I want to go? We haven't really made those decisions because we kept believing the answers are somewhere else, right? So therefore, we don't really search within ourselves or ask ourselves because we don't really trust our opinion. Or we feel like if we trust our opinion, it's too much responsibility or too much risk or whatever it is. And then we just don't seek help like within us, or we don't seek help from somewhere else, like hiring a coach, for instance, or hiring a mentor, or talking to a mentor, talking to a coach. We don't do any of those things. One of the other things that I noticed that we don't do is we don't experiment. And we also don't measure, therefore, our experiments of how things are going, or all the things that we could be trying out. We don't really do that because we always approach things from, I don't know how, right? Or which another synonym of that could be, it won't work. Or another synonym could be, um, it's like it's something that's not really sure, but I will just do it for the sake of doing. Therefore, we don't trust our path. And then the biggest thing that I find that's so fascinating to me that many of us do is we don't question this mindset. We just take it at face value of this is how things are. We don't take a question what it means, why it's there, why are we thinking this or feeling this, and what do we do before we start searching for answers. Now, as a result, then what we have is we will not know, right? We will not allow ourselves to know the answer, because even the answers that might have been in front of us, we haven't really used them, we haven't really tested them, we haven't really decided on them. Therefore, we will not know how it will work out for us. Therefore, we will not move forward in our search or in our quest for that transitioning. And therefore, we just stay in reinforcing how we are right about not knowing things. And then, like, so many coaches are talking lately about this phenomena that human beings are so desperate to being right. They want to be right. And even if it hurts them, even if it's against their desires or their goals, or they're against what they're wanting, they still rather want to be feeling right than actually going forward to what they want to, right? And that's why that's exactly what keeps happening here. Now, if we decided, being courageous and all, or you come to coaching with me, or you decided to coach yourself, and if we get courageous to question that mindset before we start searching for answers, This is some of the ways we could do that. I could, of course, if you come to me, I could help you explore so many other options, but I try to not give you too many here so that in case you go through and do this on your own, you will have some kind of like a logical pathway to go in one direction at least. But of course, you can play around with this and go in whichever direction you want to. The purpose is to understand what is the message of this mindset really is, right? It's not the purpose of like theoretical framework or philosophical, even though if you're into this, please go and do that. It's just that for you then to remove this mindset of, I don't know how, knowing what it does to us, and instead then deciding what you want to do with it. Now, if we start questioning this, one of the ways could go like this, or rather, I showed you three ways, by the way, and I could show you many other ways, but I try to be as like logical, at least according to my logic. Obviously, you may have a different one, so go ahead and question the way that you find interesting for yourself, right? So first, we may like when we say, I don't know how, someone may ask, or you yourself can ask, why? Here are the possible three scenarios that you may present. There might be more, but let's go with these three, right? So one is, I've never done this before, right? I've never transitioned this way before. Excuse me. Okay, that's fair, right? That's one way. Another way is, I don't know where to look for that, or where to find that information, or where to start. I think one of my clients' favorite quotes is, or sentences is, I don't know where to start. And that I don't know where to start is so um, blocking sentence that we can tell ourselves. And the third one is, um, I didn't use or don't use what I have found already. So maybe you have gone out and searched for things, but you're not using that information to do something about it anyway, right? In other words, you just keep consuming, or you just keep delaying, you just keep not being sure, you just keep wondering about as to um, what could go wrong or what could go right and all of these things, but actually not taking any actions on it. So if that is the case, let's start exploring the one of three scenarios that we're going by, right? So let's say the first one. I have never done this before. Now, we could question so many ways, obviously. And we could also say that obviously that's a fact, meaning you have not done this before, right? Then the question is, so just because we've never done this before doesn't mean that we can't do it or we can't try it, right? We know that logically, but I think because our brains are so like into one way of thinking, we don't really question this. So let's say that we start questioning it. Okay, so then you may say something like, well, it feels scary, it feels risky, whatever the thing that feels to you when you think that. Then you may ask, again, we're questioning it, right? We're not really trying to offend someone or yourself or blame or whatever. It's just like out of curiosity to say, okay, so what if it feels scary and risky? You may say something like, I'm afraid to take risks. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? So now we can look at it. Okay, what kind of risks are we taking? Right? So you may write, or I ideally suggest you do it in writing so that you get so much out of it, but you can also think it in your head, of course. So we say, okay, what kind of risk we're taking? We may say, okay, I'm losing my stability, I'm losing my job, I'm losing my salary, I'm losing this, or whatever the things that you believe you will lose if you transition to what you want. Very fair, right? Now, we're not judging any of it. We're just saying this is what may happen, the risks that we're taking. Okay. We also then say finding something else. We don't know if we'll find something, right? So we're going to the uncertainty. We don't know if it will work out. Now, I think usually, I don't know how really means I'm not sure if it'll work out. Because this is, I think, where the core of the problem for many of us. And I was coaching another client recently where this is where we really landed is she was saying to me, well, I don't know if it'll work out, right? Despite all the information, despite all the available information that's out there, lots of specialists or people, experts who can help her, she's really scared that it will not work out. And then I said, I asked her, so how will you make it work out? Or what needs to happen for you to feel like it will work out, right? And then she was saying, like, I don't really know. And I was saying, well, it looks like you really want to have a guarantee for it working out. And she said, yes, you're right. I really want a guarantee that it will work out. Now, we all know as adults, if we are embarking on something new, something different, something that we haven't done before, there is no guarantee. I'm not even sure if where we are currently is a guarantee either, but that's another philosophical topic, I think. But anyway, then the question is you can ask the question of, okay, who gives that guarantee? Right? We can, of course, sit around for a guarantee to come along, and we can also decide what that guarantee could look like, how it could be, or what we mean by guarantee. You could question even further that. But the ultimate question I think you need to ask yourself is who is giving you that guarantee? Because I think our brains are often in this mindset of we're waiting for someone to give us a guarantee, right? Just like when we purchase a product, we expect there to be a guarantee. Now, that is a product that is created by a company usually or by someone. And therefore, knowing the structure of it, there is a way to guarantee or even not guarantee as well. So therefore, that thing seems predictable, while where we are going may not be that predictable. Therefore, we can then go and ask ourselves, right? We can then go, okay, we know now we hit the nail in the head, I think is the expression. Now we can decide, okay, the real reason why I'm really telling myself that I don't know how is because I'm afraid that it won't work out. And therefore, I'm searching for a guarantee. Maybe I was searching for somewhere else, but knowing that I can't really search for somewhere else, then how will I create these guarantees if I want to? Or maybe not as well, right? So that's why the question you can then ask is what do you want to do about these risks? Now, you know now that what could be the risks there, and then you can answer yourself what you want to do with those risks. The way that I have answered is how I did it, which is I told myself that I could always come back if I wanted to my previous job, right? That could always be an option. I have no problem going to a lower position or a different position because for me, what's important is loving the job. So I could always go back to my previous employer, or I could also save up, and then create other guarantees. I could ask people for help, or I could try something else. Anyway, I was giving myself like lots of different options that I can choose from in case things didn't work out. But the most important part that I was focusing on when I was transitioning is the part on how I will make sure that this will work out the way that I want to. And then I was working so much more on building things or muscles or skills that make this work out, this transitioning work out, rather than focusing on how I don't know things or I don't know the how, therefore I can't really go forward and all of these things. Because If you want to focus on something, after having done this work, I really suggest you to work no matter what the risk you will take, right? Whether you decide to take the risk or not take the risk. I think it's so useful anyway to work on these skills, no matter where you go or stay. So some of them is like building confidence, building trust with yourself, um, focusing on the past achievements and how you have done it so that you can then see where and what are the ways you have achieved things that you wanted to. I also focused on what kind of plan I could have and how I could execute that plan and who do I want to be in that process who executes that plan. Even though my plan didn't go as I thought it would go, as usual, but being the person that I try to be in the process, learn from everything, every failure, every suffering, and all of these things help me arrive and keep going forward. And that's why the point of questioning is really getting yourself to the quite a useful place and deciding what to do with it rather than stay in this stuck mode, right? So let's have a look at another option that you might have said, which is, I don't know where to look for that information, right? If that is the case, then you could also ask yourself, where could you look for that information? Where could you find them? And then, like, if it was, if imagine we were cooking a meal, for instance, right? We wouldn't be sitting around and thinking, oh, I don't know where to get the ingredients, or I don't know what recipe to use, and all of this. We would just maybe Google the internet and then find the recipe we like, and we start experimenting with it. However, in life, in transitioning, we don't often take that approach. And why not? And the reason why we don't do that is because as soon as uncertainty enters our realm, our reality, then we start like, creating things in a very complicated way. We don't just think about our transitioning being like preparing a meal with a new recipe. We start thinking about it like, oh my God, there's so many things that could go wrong. So many things that I couldn't be able to do or wouldn't be able to do or whatever the things. And then we just start dramatizing in our head and keep generating more fear and fear to the point that then we just sit in, I don't know how. So that's one. I then suggest for you to question it in the way that is like, okay, where I could look for information. I could create a list of people that I could talk to, search the internet, gather the information, and then decide on what to do and then start implementing it, right? And then go from there. But we don't often go there when we are in the mindset of, I don't know how, simply because we don't question it. But if we question, at least we then start moving the needle one by one and start moving along these lines, which the algorithm of gathering information, making the analysis and deciding what to do, and then start implementing is something that, like, I would say all humanitarians know for sure. So the third option that you may say when you think about, I don't know how, you may say, well, I have used or I have gathered all this information. It's just that I'm not using it. I'm not doing anything with it, right? That may be the blocking point for you. Now, if that is the case, how else could you question that? You could ask yourself, okay, why are you not using the information that you have, right? Because maybe you say something like, I am still missing something. Then you can question, okay, what is it that I'm missing specifically? What kind of information that would be enough for me to say, now I'm ready to make a decision, or now I'm ready to make my analysis until the end? What would that be? And usually when I ask my clients, they come to me saying, I don't know. And what I have gathered is that when we say, I don't know, or sorry, when we say, I feel like there's something missing, it's usually another expression of fear instead of the actual something missing. And because it's expression of fear, that's where we get stuck as to we don't really know what's missing, right? And then You can say, okay, how will you find out? What is it that you're missing? You can search for other information, or you can also ask this curious question, what I have learned from amazing other coaches, the question of, okay, what is this preventing me or protecting me from feeling? In other words, what am I avoiding by just staying in, I'm not using this information, I don't know how. How am I just protecting myself from feeling whatever else that I don't want to feel, right? Of course, this is an unconscious way of ours, like defense, protective mechanism is protecting us. But we can still get curious to ask ourselves, what is this preventing or protecting me from feeling other emotions that we may not want to feel? Now, when we say that, when we ask that question, the usual answers that I get are the following. So we get, or I get answers like, I'm afraid of feeling judged, right? Or I'm afraid of feeling failure. In other words, I think I was doing one of the videos last year where we seem to be okay to be failing within the confines of the employment where we are, because that failure does not sound as stinging or as hard or as hurtful as when we do it outside. Meaning, when we do it, when we have left the organization and started to transition, when we feel failure, or when we feel things not going the way we want to, we feel extra hurt or humiliated or disappointed or whatever it is. I have gone through it myself so many times, and I have been curious to ask, but why is it? Because I used to fail in my job previously as well. It's not like I never failed in my previous job, right? So why is it so difficult now to handle it or to go through this? Is because I think my brain was interpreting at the time as, well, if I'm failing outside on the way to going where I want to, as if everyone is looking at me. Everyone's looking at me, everyone's judging me, everyone is saying, well, Asel, how could you? You left your wonderful job to the uncertainty of who knows what and all of these things, right? So, of course, these were all my thoughts. It's just that because I perceived this failure outside of employment as something so horrific that it took me so much more to process this disappointment or this humiliation or whatever the other feelings I was feeling. And my brain, of course, didn't want me to feel that. My brain rather preferred that I failed within the confines of my employment. Then it's safe, then no one really knows, no one really notices. Maybe especially my family and friends, right? Then you can continue questioning is to say, okay, what do you choose, right? Now that you know that your scared feeling or the way that something is missing and you keep searching for answers, but you don't really know what it is that you're looking for, this all shows that you just are afraid of failing and feeling judged, or maybe other feelings that you may find. Now you can choose from either staying where you are that you don't want to, right? That's always an option. And then turn that into a place where you like, or at least be neutral about it. That's always an option. Or you can risk feeling judged, feeling failure, and still go for what you want. Now, when you choose this, what oftentimes happens is that we just feel like if we don't go to the uncertainty, we'll be very fine. But I also have now a client who interestingly has the opposite problem. He thinks that if he goes to the uncertainty, he will magically solve a lot of the problems by staying where he is. Sorry, by let me express it another way. So he thinks that if he goes to the uncertainty of a field job, then he feels like all of his problems will go away, the problems that he's currently experiencing in his current job, right? So we may have both feelings, but what I would love for you to really get curious about is this one, which is, what are the feelings you will experience or you are currently experiencing as you decide to stay. Positive and negative. And the reason why I put the negative ones, because we just often don't really look at them, or we just don't want to, we like repress them. And that's why we don't tend to know a lot of them. That's why I listed them here just for you to be aware of. And then you can also look at and think about what are the feelings you might experience if you leave and go for what you want, right? Both positive and negative ones. Now, what is so fascinating about this is that we are going to experience pretty much very similar feelings no matter what we do. And I was like, when I was doing this exercise, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this. We are experiencing these emotions of like resentment or disappointment, doubt, fear, tired, disbelief, all of these things, overwhelm, right? We may be experiencing now. But equally, we may experience them when we go for what we want. My experience. Now, if that is the case, right, then which one do we choose? And that choice is yours. Now, in order to make things, in order to make things a lot easier for ourselves, this is what I would like to advocate for. Which is instead of thinking about, I don't know how, I would love for you to change that mindset or that sentence or that thought to, I don't know how, but I'm willing to find out. Because then if we do that, then we start looking at things from a very different perspective. Because then we're allowing all the answers to be there and allowing ourselves to hear them, listen to them, our own wisdom and other people's wisdom, and then making a very informed choice or decision. And therefore, the ways that you can do this is when you think things from this perspective of, I don't know how, but I'm willing to find out. Or I always tell myself that I'm always capable of finding out things that I don't know so far. Or even if I say I don't know what I want, I will then get curious as to how will I find out what I want, right? So that's why you have always this option and lens to look for information from this perspective. And the way that you can do that, once you start thinking about, okay, I don't know how, but I'm willing to find out, is then you start thinking, okay, what are the ways that I could find out, right? What are the ways I could find out how to transition, for instance? You could say, I could search the internet, I could start talking to people, I could hire a coach, I could hire a mentor, I could talk to someone else, whatever it is. But all of that will be with the purpose of willingness to learn so that you do something about it instead of stay confused about it, right? That's the difference. Now, once you have that information, then you can also decide, okay, do I want to do these things, or do I like the things that I have gathered, right? Do I want to do those things, or I don't want to do those things, and why? And then our brains may start offering things like, well, it's going to be hard, it's going to be uncertain, da 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 da. And then you can equally in that moment find yourself the scenarios of how it will go if you stay where you are, and then choose from the two options that you've created for yourself. You can also look at, okay, what do I need to do to be moving the needle, or whichever the way you formulate it, right? Or you can also get curious as to, okay, why haven't I really done anything yet in terms of where I'm going or what I'm wanting, right? And then you can also get curious to answer that question of, okay, because I was lacking a certain skill, I was lacking information, I was lacking coaching, or I was lacking something else. So you can see that it's a very specific thing that I'm lacking or I'm missing. And then I ask myself, why, when do I start working on them? Or, excuse me, what do I need to do specifically to start working on them? And then by when do I want to make a decision about this so that I decide either to move on or to stay where I am. Right? So when you do approach the transitioning from this mindset, using how in this way, then at least my experience with clients is that it just opens up so many possibilities of, okay, where am I going to put my resources and effort? Do I want to do this way or not? And then we get so much into the solution oriented mindset instead of swirling, ruminating, I don't know how mindset. And I really am like saying and showing this to you so that whatever the decision you take, don't delay it by using how in the counterproductive way, but rather use it in the most useful way for you to make a decision, whichever the way, and then start working on how to make that environment the way you want to instead of I don't really know where to go and how to do it, or I don't really want to stay where I am, and then just feeling like you are in between and you don't belong to either of the places where you want to go or where you are currently there. So, my dears, I hope that it was a very useful exercise for you to see how we're using how in the way that's not useful, and then also seeing how you can use the how in the most useful way to get to what you want to. And of course, come to coach with me so that we can explore this even further with your specific situation so that we can get you to transition to the place, to the identity, to the life you really want to be in and live in. Have an amazing weekend. Speak to you very soon. Bye.